to the show, everybody. Today we have a special guest. We have sociologist, cross-cultural anthropologist, and educator, Dr. Thom Wolf. Welcome to the show, Dr. Wolf.
Thank you.
But I thought we would start with today.
Good.
And so you are, I guess I could say that for 15 years, you were gone. You were in India.
Yes.
And I guess I would just ask you broadly, what were you doing in India?
Well, we've always, I've always been deeply impacted by the words of that outstanding educator and teacher, Jesus, Isa Masih. And he told us, if we have anything good to say, take it to the poor. And one of the reasons why East LA so impacted my life, that was from myself as a 20-year-old. East LA was poor. And it had a natural attraction to me. What other people wanted to almost go away from, I found myself attracted to. So in the midst of the ecology, all of the concern about the planet and everything, so you'll forgive me, I hope this is okay. I hope we have an adult audience. But people will say, what is your footprint on the planet? Mine has been, what is your butt print? So I want to know, how far have you gone towards the extreme of your ability to experience it? Go to the ends of the earth. That's the way that radical teacher described it.
Absolutely. And for the audience sake, you have been there as a professor of just for context, because a lot of our audience might not even know who you are. You have been a professor of global studies at the University Institute, and that means not just lectures. Because I think when we hear professor, we think, oh, he's this, in a tweed little jacket, and the pipe and giving a lecture. But you are replicating leaders through campus lectures,
Yes,
through Oxford University Press, through various articles, and through consulting. So I want to kind of emphasize the replicating leaders. That's what you've been doing.
Yeah, we were in India on a business visa. Okay. So University Institute, my function there that I negotiated with the government and with others was that we delivered credits. I delivered credits for US universities. So you can go on our website, universityinstitute.in, India. And what we did was people had to come for 3 weeks. It was too far to go. You've gone halfway around the world when you go from, say, Los Angeles or San Francisco to New Delhi. Okay. Then you start back on the other side. So come for 3 weeks, jet lag and all that. And we did what we call top bottom. So we engaged students with the top echelons of community leaders, university students and professors, and parliament people in parliament and such as that. So we would have them, I would arrange for them, knowing what their major was of interest in this, you need to talk to this parliament member, and people we knew in our networks, and we would connect them, or university professors. And they had to do like surveys with university students of their own age, such as this. And then they did their readings and completed their assignments. We used to have them return at first to the United States, and it's like, no, that's very hard. So they had to finish their paper and everything before they got on the plane to leave. But I was a professor of record, so that the university could give credit, and I graded the papers and all that kind of stuff. So, but we did what we call top bottom. So we had them go to the top of the society, and then we had them go to the bottom, the extreme bottom. We had them go and connect with the outcast. So India is the only one that, to talk about India in the Hindu system, you have to talk about caste. So caste is where, because of your reincarnation in your previous life, you are reincarnated and you're in this position. There's 4 positions. And then there's the 5th position, which is not caste. If you're a human, you have one of the 4 castes. And Jewish people and Christians have the law of Moses. Indians have the law of Manu. Law of Moses, law of Manu. In the law of Manu, it says, speaking of 25 to 27% of India, okay, the law of Manu says we cannot call those humans because they have no caste. They are outcasts, which would be better to be translated without caste, which means without humanity. But we cannot call them animals. This is what the law of Manu says. We cannot call them animals because they talk. What to do?
Mm.
We will call them talking animals.
Mm.
So 25% of India are talking animals, and they don't touch them. Don't touch me. That's why, like, if I meet you on the street and say, "Hi, my name is Tom," and you say,
My name is Ruben.
"Okay, but do you realize what you did? You just touched me." And untouchability is the thing. So the first thing I have to know is what is your, I have clues, see, from your skin tone, from your signature, what is your name? Because your name identifies your caste.
I have to stop you for a moment here. Do you realize what you just did? You did this before the cameras were rolling, because there was a whole thing before the cameras were even rolling here. We were talking for maybe 20 minutes. You have this ability to help the learner learn. You said the law of Moses we have out here, but in India they have the law of Manu. You did this effortlessly, but I want you to know that teachers go to school for this and learn this for years, and some may never learn this.
I'm telling you, they can take credit and they can pay us, and we will tell them.
but you did this. You helped us understand, and it will help. I'm sure afterwards, Jake or I will look up Manu to see exactly what that is. But you made it easiest for it. It made it sticky for us. And I just want to say this because we are a teaching channel, but because you do this effortlessly, like it's nothing, like everybody can do this. No, if you learn how to do this, you will reach your students.
Yes.
Before
and you will reach your highest professionals also.
Yes, but I want to remind you because I don't know if you even know what you're doing.
No, I do. I'll tell you why.
You do? Okay, before you tell me why, I just want to remind you, before the cameras started rolling, you did this. You had Jacob and I say, put our hands in the air and say, all of history comes to Jesus. Comes down to Jesus. And you made us put our hands in the air. And we had to do it. But this was a physical. We talked about this in our podcast before, is you have to make your students do something. Get up from their chair. Move. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. You're in the middle of something.
No, it's not.
But this is something that is useful for us. And it's why you have become you have been a mentor of mine and then we're going to let the cat out of the bag. So you were a pastor before you became a cross-cultural anthropologist. And your effectiveness as a teacher, this is just one and two examples of it.
Well, that's interesting because you see, the effective teachers around the world, I don't care what their background or what their worldview, maybe they live in, again, the Buddhist world or the Muslim world, the Judeo-Christian world, the secular world, it doesn't matter. And they may be in an academic situation, but their educational effectiveness is not related to academics, but to apprenticeship. So if you are doing apprentice education, you're effective. If you do academic education only, you're a great theoretician and you may have a good salary, but you're not having a good impact on people. And I would love to give credit, if I may, to who taught me this. There was an 8-year-old Mexican-American boy in East LA. And at that time, I often compare my life to the Dalai Lama. Okay, he's a Buddhist. I was a Baptist. Okay, I was a Christian. He's a Buddhist. And in Dharamsala, in fact, the chief research educator over the Dalai Lama's library was my translator for one of my works with the Indian government to be translated into Tibetan, okay, where the Dalai came in. So every year the Dalai Lama goes back to Dharamsala, et cetera, et cetera. And so I've been aware of him in India as well as in his accolades and such with the United Nations and such shit. So I've gone through life on two legs. I've walked on two legs, my pastor leg for 25 years and my professor leg for 25 years. But I will tell you what made me and transformed me. I love to read. So for, I don't know, 50 years, I've read approximately maybe 7 to 10 books a week. A book a day is what I average. Someone asked me that one time and pressed me, and so I figured it out. I went, oh gosh, I didn't know that. It's like I learned something. Okay, so here's the thing. There was an 8-year-old boy that left our congregation, and there were the bathrooms, and he went to the bathroom. Well, when he came back in, behind the sanctuary is a long hall, and it has an open door over here, open door over here to the parking lots. But before he came back in, some of his friends on the street, it was called Brady, they called him out. He's 8 years old.
Well, the Church on Brady, by the way,
it's called the Church on Brady.
Pastor of the Church on Brady, yes.
Yeah. So and by Tuesday they jumped him into a gang. Now it took our children's workers about 6 months before establishing, almost like reestablishing contact because of the web that he was in which he came for and came again to have connections. When I learned of this, it deeply impacted me. I had a BA in sociology. I had a master's degree in cross-cultural anthropology. I had an academic mindset, and I loved to teach. But my teaching went over the head and had no interest. And I'm sorry, you may want to edit this out. So if I'm improper and I'm not using proper language, but I'll tell you, and I don't know if many people know.
Those are usually the best moments
when
they're improper.
Well, I don't know if people know that some pastors, and most don't probably, or have never done it, but I'm going to tell you how this guy prayed. God dealt with me, and I made a vow. There will never again be an 8-year-old boy, an 8-year-old Mexican-American boy, to leave the sanctuary when I'm speaking to go take a piss from this day forward. And I shifted the tone and the activity and the involvement of the way I presented the cognitive material because I wanted it to catch. So my audience shifted from the PhD students at USC. We had a lot from the chemistry department, from UCLA, from the Rosemead Graduate School of Psychology, from Fuller Seminary, from Biola University, different things around. It shifted from those to an 8-year-old Mexican boy who might want to go take a piss. And by capturing that boy's attention, you know what? I had everyone else's. And I had PhD candidates at USC coming, wow, that was really helpful. I'm going to remember that. And you know, and I one time got an email from a guy on faculty at the University of Massachusetts telling me the impact that he got his PhD from USC, but the impact of Los Angeles was from a nowhere place on a side street in East LA. And I'll tell you what, it was because of the input into my life from an 8-year-old boy that I said, I don't want his life to only be involved with gangs. I want also him to be jumped into, in my vocabulary, I want him to be jumped into Jesus. He's there. So I don't know. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense.
And now that I've taken it everywhere, so I don't know if it's good or bad, but East LA is being spread everywhere. So anyway.
I want you to know that it's just in our world, the world we inhabit, we appreciate things like that because I know I tell other teachers and I remind myself that you have to reach the student in the class who has the lowest academic skills.
That's right.
So there's the 8-year-old kid, you know, metaphor or exact, kind of example of my class. And then if you hit that kid, you're reaching them all.
That's right.
And so that's a really great story, which I've never heard of before.
In fact, one of my favorite educational things, Comenius, the father of modern education. Okay, every adult education um, educational center in Europe with the European Union is called the Comenius Educational Center, right? In every nation. Okay. So I asked people who is Comenius. Well, in 1639, in the United States, they were establishing Harvard College, which became Harvard University. Here's my question. Who was the first candidate, the first choice of the committee to find a president for Harvard College? Who was their first choice? You probably already guessed. It was Comenius.
Right.
All right. Why did Johann Comenius turn them down? What reason did he give for them?
Jacob?
I don't know.
Comenius was a part of the Bohemian Brothers there in Poland, that area of the Czech Republic in Poland. And he was right in the 1500s and into he was in the 1600s. He was, they were persecuted. And the leaders had him one time as people were coming, they had him escape, but they weren't able to get his wife and children out, and his wife and children were killed. And this man was on the run, looked for, because he was an influential leader. And he told the Harvard committee that he was too involved with teaching children. In sometimes dangerous situations in Poland and in the Czech Republic. And he couldn't, well, in a sense, I guess he was saying he couldn't go to lesser things like Harvard because he was taking and teaching children of elementary and middle school levels in the underground church. So I've always had a special thing. I published on him, like in the Comparative Civilizations Review and other journals and everything like this, because he's quite, yeah.
It's a useful thing. I wrote his name down, and I want to look more about this.
Well, as you're sharing, Dr. Thom, I was thinking, you've been as we're here, you've been a mentor to us and to many people. But I've always thought, who was Dr. Thom's mentor? Who was somebody that really had an influence on your life to be the instructor, to be the pastor, to be the leader that you've been?
That's interesting, Jacob, because other people have asked that, and while I've encouraged that with others and set up structures to have people get a mentor and such as, in my generation, there wasn't anything like that. Okay. And I think it was so much, my personal inner life was so much connected to the culture that I was, in a sense, a cultural follower or believer, and it was supporting. So, but my mentors were through books. And that's why I tell people books are not books. If you think a book is a book, you don't even understand what libraries are. Books are people frozen in time. They are popsicles with pages. Okay. I've taken, in my graduate studies, I had read a couple of the men that I went to study under. And one time I was in a seminar, there were 7 of us, and the professor, he was about to retire. Within 2 years, he retired, and he had a nervous shake in his hand, and he would put it under his leg to hold it, and he would talk to us. And I realized when I went to read the reading assignments, I'm reading his book, but I'm hearing his voice from the seminar. And I learned that with about 3 different ones, an Australian professor, one that had been in India for many years. And it was like, you can hear their tone and their voice, the way they construct their sentences, semicolons or whatever it is, you hear them. Books are not books. Books are people. So I have a lot of friends. So I have, I say 10,000 plus friends in my personal library, and my wife tells me now it's closer to 12,000. But anyway, but we're poor because of having so many friends that we. So, but that's what I see.
Okay.
And it's like I was mentored by Martin Luther, by John Calvin. I was mentored by C.H. Spurgeon, who was an outstanding speaker, public speaker in London. John Wesley. I was mentored. A.W. Pink. I was mentored through books.
I think that's really interesting that you're saying that, because in this generation, we're living in the era of big social media and all these things, and it's always been associated with negative thing, negative, and it often is. But what's fascinating is that you can be mentored online by very wise people.
Yes.
There's a lot of bad people online, but there's also very good people. And I find that I have mentors online who have directed me to read certain books.
Yep.
And there's 2 or 3 people I have found who I'll read their book. I check in on them every day. It's like, because you were saying, because I don't know if people are looking at this as a strange thing, that these are people in books that are mentoring this man. This is, I think, God ordained.
Yes.
Some of them are in books, have passed on, or they're here today living, who have much to offer us.
Yeah.
If you just take advantage.
Well, when you read a book, sometimes you make yourself finish a chapter, and some chapters are shorter, which would make it easier. Well, I think that books, I've asked myself, is what we call books in the electronic world called blogs.
Yeah.
They're books. They're short books. They're chapters, you see?
Yeah.
They're chapters. Well, that means that's a recent posting.
Right.
So that's a chapter in a book. They're blogs. And you follow different blogs. Well, you're a reader. So even if it's auditory, then you're,
Right.
People ask me, who was, I can't remember his name. The first person who headed up the literacy program for the United Nations was he was almost retired. He was during the time of Albert Schweitzer and all this, but he was a Methodist missionary. And he is the one who came up with the thing of each one teach one. Well, he shifted to the literacy program of the United Nations, and they had the each one teach one all through the United Nations. But what they found is they got stuck at somewhere around 50%. Sometimes they go up to 70 in areas and such as, but more or less the world has become almost stuck at 50%. And what I've shared with people is half of the world reads, but all of the world listens. And that's why verbal communication, the actual life interaction and investment with people verbally, that's why podcasts are powerful, because people hear it. Everybody on planet Earth hears, and half of them read.
Well, now we can always go back to India because there's definite passion there. And so this could be kind of like a freewheeling thing. So we could go a few avenues. If we don't like where we're going down that street, we could turn back around. But I do want to mention something that I remember, and I might have heard wrong. So to give context about teaching, and in more specifically, the way things are communicated. So for those of you, just to give a little more context, Brother Thom, as we knew him, was a pastor of Brady for 25 years. What struck me as an 8-year-old child, an 8-year-old
Really?
Mexican
That-
boy,
that- oh
that's
my
when I started
gosh.
going.
You-
I was that boy.
His mom,
I left the gang.
his mom made him stay in, you said,
Yeah, my mom made us.
wet your pants.
But by the way, that worked. Your teaching, your preaching was so strong that I remember as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, finding a suitcase full of old tapes, my brother and I, my brother Chris, and we would just listen. That's fascinating of itself, seeing a 13-year-old kid listening to sermons.
I was a blogger, or whatever you call it.
Yeah,
Podcast.
but I was mesmerized by your speaking ability. Absolutely. My brother Chris and I, and what I noticed were things that I couldn't articulate back then that I can now. Your use of pauses, your use of humor that I would just say this. I wish I had an example of a joke or something that you had said, but the way you would make the audience laugh, but then stop by suddenly taking a quick turn to very serious, to driving the point home. This is something I do as a teacher now. I stole it from you. Is see a bad communicator, and I've seen this sometimes even from behind the pulpit, of they turn it into a stand-up act where they keep telling the joke, and you lose the point where they don't know they're missing the point of the humor.
That's right.
And I guess I had remembered, I guess you could talk about that in general, but also I had remembered hearing that you really took speech early on and you took it seriously as a young man, and maybe even performance and acting and things like that. And I always appreciated that in you, in the sense that you have to do that as a pastor. I think that's important. Would you recommend something like that, or is that maybe taking it too far?
No, and I think that every person adapts it to their own personality.
Right.
So you're not me. And I always tell people, I say, hold up your thing. Okay, you are you. Every human has a different fingerprint. Now, but you see, every human has a fingerprint. So we are both common, but we're unique. So affirm your uniqueness. Well, and let me take 3 steps to get to your answer. I mean, to your question, because I left these unsaid. With this boy and everything, what's interesting to me is when I was there for 20 years as the key team leader at Brady. Do you remember what the congregation gave me as a gift for my 20 years? What they gave me?
Was it a car?
No. Well, they did give some kind of thing, but what they gave me was a collection. Chuck Close and others had gone. They gave me a collection of all the sounds and the jokes and the things that I'd made over 20 years. So if I said, and then like he stood and roared, you know, they give me all those things.
Wake me up.
Dumb thing, yeah, but they were all that. So I pondered that and I thought, wow, that's interesting. Because see what is it that made you our leader? All these goofy sounds and everything. Okay, and so that again, the thing about see, the instruction by the teacher, the main mentor, was take this to the ends of the earth. This needs to be disseminated on a global scale. This is the difference of like if you're Buddhist, you can come and receive it, but Jesus, to his part, said you take the initiative. You're innovative. That's why Christianity has always been innovators, leading in technology and industry and any field. They're innovators. You get that spirit within you. Okay, so my question is, I'm concerned about your footprint, but I'm concerned about your butt print. If I can go back to that, go as far as you can go. Lynn and I had my 60th birthday and my 70th birthday in India. Okay, you go as far as you can go. India, okay, with the greatest poverty, the greatest illiteracy, the greatest social disparities. So we went as far as we could go. But you know what? At my age, I wasn't able just to live my life in a village. with poor sanitation and all this. So we lived in the capital, okay? But what my statement was, go to the ends of the earth for you. Sit down, dangle your feet over the cliff of the ends of the earth, and draw a circle around your butt print. I want to know your butt print. I want to know that you in your life are venturing as far as you can to make impact for good and life flourishing for all people. And if yours is with little children in elementary, do that. And go there, and you will never regret it. Never regret it. Go to the edge, dangle your feet over the edge, and now draw your butt print. That's what I'm interested in. This will be a better planet when that happened. So let me say this: in India, on an educational visa, so we've given credit to Syracuse University, University of Texas, Austin, New York University, Columbia University. Our last university that we connected with and we gave credit for it was a guy doing a seminar at Yale University. So we have that as a partner university. But I'm just saying that we told people you're going to be connected to the extreme poor. And people said, what can I do? I don't speak Hindi like you guys. I think I can't do this, what I do. I said, these children are taught that they're nothing. You go and you touch them and you've transformed their life because you're a foreigner, you're a European. See, you're Russian or you're French or you're UK, you're Canadian, you're Mexican, you're American. You go and touch them. And then you know what else? When you play with them as you finish it, hug them. And you will leave here and get on a plane and fly back to America. But I want you to know this, you have changed a child's life. And you do the same. You hug their parent goodbye. That man, you guys that you've gotten to know that guy and you laughed and you've had a translator, and you tell him this is what we do in America, and you hug him. You have changed his life. He has a moment of inspiration that nobody can take from him. So if you don't want to do this, let us know, and we will connect you with other educational institutions, NGOs, and everything, and you can go to the high. But if you come with University Institute, you're going to be top bottom. You're an educated person, so we'll connect you to the educated and to leaders. But we want you to also touch the poor, so it's top and the bottom. And our educational experience was educational experiential education. So Comenius and Vygotsky. So Vygotsky, I never knew of him until I was doing my PhD work. And what I realized, Vygotsky has explained the theory of what I've done for 25 years of my life. But I never had a name for it. I never had an academic framing of it. And that is, you have the teacher to the group, and then you have leaders emerge. And so then you assign them to teach the other little students or the less bright students. So you have peer-based learning. And then it eventually goes to, Montessori and different things. So there's different things that took the aspects of that kind of a learning. But Vygotsky was the educational, academic and everything in this. And it's like, oh, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, that's good. And I like what you said about Comenius. And then earlier on, you were mentioning if, you talk about the butt print and where you're going. And, but I guess I appreciate this idea of, it kind of connects with another question I was going to ask is when people walk into a church, or even, let's talk about Brady, the old Brady, and they see someone like you with a lot of talent. Let's face it, Brother Thom, you can deliver a sermon like few others. Some of the choir members and the singing, there's a lot of talent, and perhaps somebody doesn't feel like they can do it. But you mentioned, well, if you could teach elementary school, if you could, and you mentioned the example of Comenius, if you can at least do that, that's an imprint. That's an impact. Maybe the bigger impact of all, because we kind of get swayed by you know, the influencers, especially the younger generation, they see TikTok and Instagram and they see beautiful people doing, you know, grandiose things. But you are submitting, no, sometimes it's the humble choices that also make an impact.
I had a friend, a person introduced me to him. He wasn't my friend, he was a total stranger, but he was involved with political movements. So we hadn't been in India for, oh my gosh, maybe within the first year. And he invited me to a rally, and I didn't know what a rally was. And so I'm thinking, wow, maybe a couple hundred people or so. It was 24,000 people on one of the largest fairgrounds of New Delhi. And then they called me up to speak, and I spoke with translation. Afterwards, we were at his combination, your house and business. And up the stairs came a man who's retired professor of history at Delhi University. And Sunil pointed me out, and the man came over and he said, "Is it true?" He said, "You know, Sunil told me that you spoke at the rally. Is this true?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh my God." He said, "You know that that's illegal." I said, "Well, no, I should not go. I really did." He said, "It's you, foreigners can't do that." And so from that, there came a buzz, and the professor of sociology at Lucknow University, okay, which is like the Princeton or the Yale or something like this in Lucknow, another city. He invited me to do a lecture in the sociology department, everything there. So, and then from that, the faculty invited me to publish in their journal. So within 2 years of being in India, I got published in a major university journal, which just set a tone, which I had no control over. Well, first of all, we have to see that you're going to impact people in such in ways you don't know. I call it failing forward. Just stumble forward and just show up. And you see, once you understand that if you want to touch the future, if you want to impact things, then touch the children. And again, how many times do we know from trauma counseling and such as this that often people stop? You start taking drugs when you're 13, that's where your emotional life kind of freezes. You were beaten by your own father or the companion of your mother. You're beaten when you were 9 years old. You get a freeze. There's a trauma on your spirit and everything. And that's why I think people don't see or understand the impact of children. I'll give you one example. I got into the habit because if I tell an Indian audience, they know exactly what I mean. I said, you know how you walk like this? I said, but if you're a politician, once he puts on his, and they have a certain kind of like uniform, I said, then all of a sudden he begins to like this, and because they walk a different way, and you have to show respect because you're a politician. And everybody just laughs like, yes, we know exactly what you mean. So, but what I found was this. I'm a professional too. And from the standpoint of the United States, and I'm in upper class, which I never thought of myself, but my class standing was upped just by being in their country. But I meet politicians, but many times they have their family with them, or their grandchildren, they have their son, or especially their son with them or so, and he has his child. What I would do is I would kneel down to 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and they were small and everything. And I would talk to them in Hindi. I would, you know, up and stuff like that. You know, what is your name? And I'm Papa Tom and everything. You know, and then to stand back up and just talk to them and carry on. We're at a rally. We're at a convention. We're at some meeting, something like this. Okay. 6 years go by. 7 years go by. That person is back in New Delhi. We meet again, maybe in the Parliament area downtown, or maybe in one of the shopping malls around the circle of downtown. And you know what they remember? They don't remember our conversation that I had 7 years before, and I don't remember. But you know what that politician remembers? You're the man that knelt down and talked to my grandson. And that boy remembers that to this day. And I remember it, and I want to thank you. Yeah, those are things that I've seen that see, I think that we get caught up in yeah, I'm the teacher and I got my BA and now I'm taking continuing edge to up my salary at least, if not my, you know what I mean? So we forget that. What is our audience? Our audience is to impact these children's lives, and to your best ability, become a good storyteller. To your ability, to the matching of your who you are. But my point is like, do you have a better way? I know this one works, and maybe we can, in our educational toolbox, we can add other things. But this thing of telling stories, and then from that, see, my teacher mentor was that odd intellectual in a minority people in a minority country. His name was, I forget, oh yeah, Jesus. Yeah. And that teacher, that educationalist, see, it says that he spoke in parables. He told stories, picture stories. So once you heard it, and here's this guy in a pig pen. I mean, he is with the pigs, and he's sitting there, oink, 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 oink. He's sitting there with pigs. He has pig poo on him. And you know what it says? He came to his senses and he went, oh, what am I doing? I am an idiot. So you make up your own story and everything. And then he went, and I'll tell you something that I never understood until I got to Asia. See, in Asia, the elderly do not run, the young run. And what Americans and Europeans miss, that every Asian catches it when they hear it for the first time. The elderly father ran to meet his son. Elderly's never, the son runs to meet him. He ran, and then it says he kissed him. But my first foreign language academically was Greek. And it doesn't in the Greek say he kissed him. You know what it says? He kissed him and kissed him and kissed him and kissed him. And you tell that to an Asian, a son who had taken all of his inheritance. I want it now. I don't want it when you die. I want it now. And he went out and he partied. The dude partied, drugs, dames, you know. And then he ended up, when his money left, all his friends left, he ends up in a pig pen. This is a Jewish story. This is an ethnically framed story. When Jesus got through telling that, you know what? Not only could they not forget it, the world, planet Earth, cannot forget that story.
This is really good. I think the charge then, or the real lesson from this, if you're a new teacher, or if you're a teacher who's in a rut, I think the first question to ask isn't, how do I get the content out? The question is, am I loving my students? How am I doing that? That's what I'm getting here. And I think I think before the cameras started rolling, you were mentioning, it's been a long conversation. Maybe it was when the cameras were rolling. The importance of first the students feeling like the teacher's caring.
Yeah.
And we've heard it before, but you're underscoring this idea, and it's a really good reminder.
Well, that's interesting because, and I think that you had a list of things and you threw in, it does matter how you present it. And see, I'm saying that how you present it is as important as the content. And we get caught up in the academics and our study guide and what we're supposed to cover and writing it down. And we get up with all the thing that I make is the difference between the academic and the apprentice. And you see, so we get caught up in the academic, the details that we're going to report to our teaching supervisor or other teachers. But the question is, what can be reproduced in those students? Like, what do they remember? What do they go? And then they see, when you do those stories and everything, they do like, oh, that's my favorite teacher. And they love me. And they sense that you're doing that. Otherwise, they're sitting there like, you know, because you're going through the list of things that you needed to cover.
But see, here's the thing though. We've talked about passion. You are clearly passionate about your subject. And this is, I think, a very important quality too. That the
Yeah.
that the because
Yeah.
you go, oh, I've got to go through this and this and this.
Mhm.
You got to believe it and love it.
You do.
And if you don't, you might want to rethink, I think, your career
Well,
choice.
I agree. There's lots of
I,
very beneficial and helpful things.
I do have another question about Brady, but did you want to interject something off?
Well, no, I mean, when you're sharing about the children and you have that heart for actually not every adult will see an 8-year-old and their heart will break for them. But I think because you were thinking not just you're thinking not just of what's happening at that moment, you're thinking for his eternity, right? I look at you and I see somebody who has had different steps in your life. You've been a pastor, you've been a missionary, you've been a teacher, an instructor, and a university, and so forth. What's next for you though? I mean, I'm thinking, where are you going now? I mean, what you're going to have an 80th birthday coming up?
Yeah, I'm coming.
And you're a very young 80-year-old, but I have a feeling there's more to be done.
Well, interesting. And let me go back on one thing about people talking about success and everything. I remember one time a person said, "Oh, yeah, well, you're a successful person. You have hundreds of people that listen to you." And I said, "Yeah, but what's different is I started off with sometimes 14 or 15 people showing up, you know, or this or that. So I said, you must give as much attention and energy to 8 people as to 800, to 10 people as to 100. And see, people don't do that. Oh, this is not important, and it's a small class, or these kids don't see. Stop it! Slap your face! Slap your face! Go and run into a wall and get a bloody face. But don't tell me that those 4 children are not important. That's your problem. It's not their problem. They're children. They are here to learn everything. That's your problem. So I think from that standpoint, from a professional standpoint, we have to see that if I have a small class or I have an auditorium class, I never will forget I was invited to lecture at the Ministry of Finance of the government of post 1989, the collapse of the wall. And so I guess, I don't know if Putin, I think it was Gorbachev or something was there. So anyway, I got invited, I spoke, and we've got this huge auditorium, but they were so unconnected that one of the things I did, and it shocked everyone, I went from the lectern, and they're following me, but they're kind of like whatever. And I sat down and slid down and sat next to the wall on the floor. And at that point, I had every Russian student's attention. What? You're supposed to be lecturing with boredom from the lectern. You're a foreigner, and we're courteous to you as an American. And the professors were there, and they were like, and so I gave some illustration or something. Then I come back to the thing and make the point. You see what you're saying? For me, I've done it so long, it comes, I don't have an audience here, but I have a point I want to make. I'll tell you what happened. The person who invited the senior professor came, and on the base, she said, because of what you did there, I know that you can relate to students. And it was a whole different, we ask you to lecture for, and on my resume, it says the Ministry of Finance of the Russian government or something like that. She said, I'm making an application to represent the government at the United Nations, but I have a deadline. Could you take my class? And I went with 6 students. Yeah, 6 students. And the time there with them in a seminar, who else has had a seminar with graduate students at the Ministry of Finance of the Russian government? But you see, have your first thing not, oh, I have a little audience. They gave me a little audience. They gave me a big one. No, that's not about you. You're there as a teacher, and you're going to make impact
See,
in that life in the coming
see,
generation.
that tells me that you might have had a performance background, because as a actor, when I was an actor and I did improv and did classes, and a lot of the drama professors and instructors would say to me, whether you have 1,000 or you have 2 in the audience, you perform the same.
Exactly.
You give it to them.
Exactly.
And so,
And if you don't, from the 2, you're never going to get to the
that's
1,000.
right. That's right. And so I don't know if you even answered before you get into what's going on in the future, I'm not sure if you ever answered the question. And maybe I'm speaking too much. This is my moment where I'm saying, uh-oh, maybe we should edit this out. But I've struggled in churches since I left Brady. I've struggled going to different churches. I have not enjoyed my time. I have, in all candor, I have been very, very bored. For a variety of reasons, a pastor might talk too much. There are times when pastors forget that it's that word, it's that moment you're trying to hit, but they'll step all over their moment. You know what I mean? I think
Yep.
you're going to get what I'm saying. There's this idea of stepping on yourself or stepping on your moment, and they don't realize what they're doing.
Yeah, stop. Do it right there.
Right there, right there. There's your moment where we have to process it. They're too funny, where they stand up, they think they're doing stand-up comedy. They're too dry, where they think it's just a lecture in a university hall. So I guess my question to you is, what is missing in preaching? Or am I overanalyzing it?
Well, no, I don't think so. I think that again, the dichotomy, and I'm kind of repeat this as a theme, is that we think that education is academics. That's the setting by which we get it. But and that's why people will tell you that the best thing they did in their educational degree was the program they had set up for them to be. I don't even know what it's called here in the United States, but teacher. You go to the classroom and you have a semester where you're the teaching assistant or so, and from that experience, that's where, like, yes, I do want to be a teacher, because they're with the children, with the young people, with the high school, whatever, they're with them. And what they're doing, though, you see, is application. So that's what I see.
I see that. Before we get into the future, just and we'll stop talking about Brady. But I notice, even as a child, the high standards everywhere you looked. There was for a church that size. Okay, we talked about your sermons. We could talk about the choir and the strength of the singing. And again, for the size of that church, the amount of great singing and performance. Now, I was interested in acting. When people ask me, how did you become, where did you start doing plays and doing these? I go, church, a little church in East LA, because of the quality of the productions, which leads me to the question of what does that mean what did that mean in your leadership at that time, to have a high standard in these areas across, the creative arts, the teaching? So it's not just the creative arts, but across the whole ministry there at Brady.
I think a recognition that other people also have giftings and abilities in their life, help them find that niche and their synergy. Like I don't remember I think that I need to get this down. I saw this and I haven't got it, but like one horse can, let's say, pull let's say 300 pounds. I'm making this up. But then when you get 2 horses, it's not that they can, what did I just say? 300. It's not that they can pull together 600. Together they can pull like 18,000 or something like it, or 12,000 or something. It's some big number like that. See, 2 are better than 1. A 3-foot cord is not easily broken. So you exponentially, I don't know the word, or something, exponentially or something, where it's not just 2 + 2 = 4. It's 2, 1 is this and 2 is like, 4 or 5 times. So seeing that, honoring that,
Okay.
and keeping things on. One time there was a staff member. We had him come on because he was good. We knew he was good from there. We had him come on, but he kept having an explosive anger. what do you call it, temper. And he did that with other people and it hurt them. And he did it with me. So, and I told him, you have to stop this with the people and don't do it to me. Because if you do it to me again, we've come to the place where you have, I never fired people. They fired themselves. If they may transition or something, but if they got fired, they fired themselves. So I told him, if you ever do it again, and so he did. A few months later, you know, he came to a boarding bunny, and I said, so you just excused yourself, right? And I don't know, everything. He left.
Mm.
About 3 years later, he called me and we met in the parking lot. He said, can I meet you? I'll drive halfway. We drove. And he was already there at the back of the trunk of his car. And I drove up. And when I did, he started crying. And we embraced. And he said, I am experiencing with others what you experience with me. I had no idea. You have to be willing also to say, maybe you fail or maybe even get exited from some school district, and then you'll find a school district or something you want to stay in teaching, but that accepts kind of maybe a little bit more anti or whatever it is, engagement with students, but you find the niche. And then you work with that. And I think that people had a trusted environment. I can fail, but I'm not called a failure because I failed. People will be around me and we'll together succeed. And when they did, it's like, I couldn't do that, but I know how to take, I see, I can walk forward, but I know how to take 2 or 3 steps back. So just get out of the picture, just take 2 or 3 steps back and let the singers do it and let the actors.
Yes. Wow. Okay. I have a comment. So this is a good opportunity to tell you something that that I've thought of for years. You didn't always just sit back. Sometimes you pushed in, and not just you, Carol Davis, you and Carol, maybe one other leader, and there was kind of like a raised eyebrow at times. So I was in the creative arts industry during your tenure there, as some of the musicals and plays.
Yeah, like Dave Otta,
awesome. Jay Parker. Come on, the hits just keep coming. So and then the musicals, and the band, the orchestra was amazing. But there was at times some grumbling. And as I reflect, even back then I thought the standard is very high, and you will intervene sometimes when it starts to slip a little bit, and you did. And I remember when I was there, a couple of us might have said, I don't think I grumbled, but I remember hearing a few grumblings like, and I thought, this is a high demanding leadership. And even as I stepped into high school ministry, I thought that too. I go, this is a lot of demand. And I thought, as I left, one day it went away, and we don't need to rehash all that. But I haven't seen anything quite like that since. And I'm sure there's been some regrets of not having that. It's like, to me, I don't regret being a part of that, because you have to. Like, you only know it's great sometimes until you don't have it.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
There were so
we have many lessons in life like that.
I cannot tell you how many people would come to me, and I didn't write anything. I was just part of it. I was acting in some things. Years later, people coming to me and say, my life changed going to that play. I started going to the church, or I started going to another church, but I just started seeing some of those productions and the high quality, and it was around. So I just wanted to say, though, that the grumbling might have been there here or there, but we knew what we had.
Well, and that's the thing. See, taking a position of being interactive educationally and incarnational rather than just an intellectual approach. You see, yeah, there's disagreements because people aren't at the same point, et cetera, and there are even disagreements. But once you've established some of the guidelines that we will do discussion,
Right.
We won't do damage
But-
as
but-
such, you know, and
But here it is though, there's a sweet spot because hearing you, people who don't know you might listen to you and you welled up in tears a few times already in our
yeah,
conversation.
you're
They-
messing with me.
They know, they could tell this is a very sensitive man. This is a very sweet man, and he talks about the children. But there's another side of you that's very tough. And the reason I bring that out, not to, scold you, of course not, but it's the same as being an effective teacher. It's a sweet spot of being very kind to your classroom and sweet, but having rigorous demands.
Well,
Yeah.
And it's one of the hardest thing as a teacher to have both.
Yes, yeah,
But even with the gentleman, who let go of himself, like you shared, he, you have a standard and everyone seems, and whoever's there is understanding it. And when someone's going off and behaving inappropriately and they're not doing what they need to be doing, then you have no problem saying, oh, I'll give you another chance here.
yeah,
In your words, right?
Yeah.
And then, so when you do make that bad choice, you understand it. That's why he came
Yep.
back later, because he understood.
That's
He made
right.
a bad choice.
That's
And if
right.
that's what anybody.
And then you are closer friends than ever before,
Right.
you see.
Yeah.
See. So those are the things, establish those and see, I came to a great core. I'll go back to University Institute in India. See, we frame it as a University Institute is focused on the crucial question of the 21st century. What is the best way to live life on this planet? That is the question. I don't care what else you do. And there are 8 answers. There's the shaman, the sage, the sadhu, the Sakyamuni, the skeptic, the savior, and then there is the seal of the prophets, Muhammad, and there is the saint, the Pope in Catholic Church. So those are the 8 options. Okay, so the global world, we don't have any other unexplored geographical areas. They did find another Aboriginal tribe somewhere, I believe. Was it Japan or the Philippines? So we're finding little things, and they're finding little bugs and little worms and little crickets and different things. But basically, the planet's there. Well, I call them geo-life zones. So there are zones on the planet. And when you're in that zone, life is a certain way, but you can get on an airplane. And when you go to another one, when you get off the airport, if you get off the plane, you know that you're in a different place. Okay. And so and here's the thing that in our teaching and everything, see, and I think this is the struggle right now with the United States. If I may look as a sociologist, when we came back to the United States, 2015, so what is that? 9 years ago. So, okay, a decade ago. When we came back in the middle of, was it Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump?
Right before the election.
Yes.
A year before the election.
And what Lynn and I, within a few weeks or so, we realized, you know what, we need to do some culture learning.
Mhm.
That the America that we left at 9/11, right after 9/11. So at 2001, it's really different than 2015. So just like we did culture learning in India, we need to do culture learning here because, we're not just Americans, we're newbies. And so we listen to this and listen to that. And I just went back to my pattern. People, well, some people say, well, you don't listen to Fox News, do you? I go, yeah. Well, you don't listen, or someone else will say, you don't listen to CNN, do you? And I go, yeah. And again, I listen to BBC, to
That's
Sky
right.
News, I listen
That's
to Al Jazeera. Do you listen to Al Jazeera? They're telling me, well, you're this, or
I completely agree with
you
you.
know what I'm saying?
Like you hear, I'm suspicious of anybody who gets their news from one source.
Yes,
They could be lying to you.
yeah. So it's just like,
Filter it.
and
to your
what
own-
you do is now then you get it out. Okay, here's the difference. The 20th century and education in America was based, I think, here's my opinion, okay? Here's Tommy's take, okay?
Tommy? Hold on.
Here's Tommy's take.
I will never call you Tommy. Go on.
But this is Tommy's take. The 20th century, with a united, more or less united culture in the Judeo-Christian worldview on those 8 things, that's the Savior worldview. Okay. It was a culture of statements. If you want to educate, you make statements. The 21st century is a conflicted, separated, there's not unity. At least there's opposite opinions, and many times they're opposing opinions. Okay. And now then the conversation in your education will go forward with questions. 20th century statements, 21st century questions. Okay, I'll ask you a question. What is the power of a question? The power, and I'll give you the answer. The power of a question is you will always answer truthfully, internally, whether or not you ever answer truthfully externally. Let me give you an example. Did you ever lie to your parents? Have you ever violated a traffic law? Have you ever had sex with someone you shouldn't have had sex with? Have you ever treated a student or so unjustly, or have you ever had really aggressive thoughts against an administrator? Okay, now then, let's have a discussion right now. We're online. Share with each one of those.
And we're gonna have to edit this out.
You see, at that moment, you make a decision of whether or not you will discuss it publicly. You see?
Yeah.
So you will always, but here's the power. I don't know all the psychological, neurological factors, but I do know this. You will always answer truthfully internally at the moment you ask the question. So don't state your position until you can state your position in the form of a question. Now that causes you as a teacher, instructor, a lot of homework, but it's powerful. The more you can give penetrating and significant questions, then in that sense, it may take years or so, but you won the discussion. Or at least, if you didn't win it, you open it to what is truly essential.
By the way, thank you for also helping us learn how to learn, because you said the 20th century was about making statements. 21st century was about asking questions. So that's very easy to remember.
Don't thank me. Thank an 8-year-old boy in East LA.
Yeah.
Because he taught me that. And I'm deeply indebted to him.
Yes.
Of whom, in the years, I don't remember his name. If I did, I would definitely share.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. And I hope you enjoyed this discussion with how we know this man as Brother Thom, but this is Dr. Thom Wolf. And so I will just say I feel very grateful having spoken to him. I'll let you discuss how you feel right now, Jacob, but I want to say that as I think about my life, I think about certain people that have impacted me who I hadn't had an opportunity to say thank you. I think about Mr. Halbeth in 6th grade. You know, I think about Miss Rogers. I think about Mrs. Astro. I just didn't have the chance, to go, I think about Dr. Weinstock at Long Beach State. I wish I could say something. I have been able to say something to others like Dr. Salwack at Citrus College and Derek Nichols, who I'm in contact with, and we talk on Facebook, who was a coach of mine, big time mentor. And I feel grateful also that I could just sit down and talk to Dr. Thom Wolf. It was fun, but it was also just really, I don't know, cool. to have a long form discussion with him. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah. I same here. I am grateful as well as he was sharing some of his ideas with us regarding even his book collection and this 8-year-old boy. I think you mentioned, I remember you mentioned that you were 8 years old when we first went to Church on Brady, and that he really connects his stories to things that you could understand, you could visualize. He's a great storyteller, and and you're still learning from him. Even when he talks about disciplining that staff member, you're still learning. Like, oh wow, this is there's proper ways of handling yourself. And he talks about even mentorship with his books, how they've been even mentored him. And that being said, Ruben, I guess I'm just appreciative that we still have him, and I pray that we have him for many, many years more because he's having an 80th birthday this summer, and I'm just so glad that you and I, we know, and Chris, our brother, and our family, we've had a chance to grow up with him, really, and his children. We're still friends with his sons, and so, or at least Matt Wolf, predominantly. But that, yeah, I'm so appreciative as you are, Ruben, that he took the time, because he didn't have to, took the time to talk to us and share his heart, and I'm eternally grateful for that.
And I guess if there's one thing I could say, if you are a person who thinks back fondly over a teacher or a coach or a pastor, rabbi, priest, and you haven't reached out, and they're not as young as they were, let's just say, I encourage you to just send a message. It's easier now than ever. You don't even have to buy a stamp, and do all that sort of thing. Jacob, when's the last time you wrote a letter to somebody with a
I was
stamp?
just thinking about this. It's been years. I can't even remember. It's been years, maybe a couple of decades.
I know, same thing with me. And so we have, digital opportunities at our fingertips, and let them know. And it was a real treat for me and for you and for Pod and Deliver. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.